Welcome to today's Zinc Webcast. We've designed this webcast today specifically for you as the Marriott team members, so hopefully this gives you exactly the information you're looking for. We're going to be providing more details about Zinc's all-mode communication platform. My name is Nicole Sanders, and I'm going to be moderating today's event. Just before we get started, just to cover a few logistics, we're going to run about 30 minutes today, and we want to make sure we have time for questions. Hang on, and we'll answer questions towards the end. That would be great. You can submit your questions throughout the presentation, however, so as they come to mind, go ahead and submit those. If you just click on the small orange arrow on the right side of your screen, you have the ability to submit a question there. We are going to be recording today's presentation and can provide the link as a replay to you tomorrow. So if you have any colleagues who weren't able to join, we'll be providing that to you. So wanted to introduce today's speakers. We're happy to have with us John Stedick. He's our Chief Product Officer. He's going to be taking us through an overview of communication in a hospitality setting and how Zinc's all-mode communication platform can address your needs. Many of you, or some of you, may have met him at the Marriott Download Conference last week, so you'll be familiar with him and his voice. Following John is Edward Saavedra, Zinc's sales engineer, and he'll be providing a demonstration of our platform today and hopefully give you a really good taste of exactly how it could work in your situation. So John, I'll turn it over to you to get us started.
Great, thanks Nicole. Good morning, good afternoon everyone. We're going to start off today just talking about Zinc in general, and Zinc is a communication platform designed for deskless workers. And for those of you in the hospitality space, the majority of your staff, in fact, are deskless workers. These are your maintenance staff, your front desk staff, your housekeeping, your banquet teams. Basically, the majority of the staff in a hospitality environment who's out there either servicing customers or doing work for the goal of creating a great guest experience. And Zinc is all about being able to create an efficient and cost-effective communication platform for those deskless workers. So if we think about the traditional hospitality environment and how you're communicating, there's lots of different modes that people are communicating in a hospitality environment. You know, the general manager has, wants to send out an email to all the key senior staff and department heads about an important VIP group that's coming in, outlining the plans of the day. The front desk has someone who's arriving early and they've got to grab a radio to be able to be talking. Other people are broadcasting out on radios, wondering whether anyone's listening. People have, things go wrong throughout the property all the time, and so being able to get a hold of someone's trying to call someone from IT to be able to understand what's actually happening. And traditionally, what we see across all these different modes of communication, and their separate modes of communication across separate devices, at times there can be slow response times. You end up delivering lower quality of service, which drives to a poorer customer satisfaction and ultimately lower revenue for the hotel. So at Zinc, we feel if you can continue to evolve how you communicate within staff on property, you can ultimately end up delivering a better customer experience and a better business results overall for the hotel. So enter Zinc, the all-mode communication platform. So we've designed Zinc specifically, as I said, for the deskless worker as a single intuitive platform that is mobile first and allows you to communicate in real time across lots of different modes of communication, whether that's calling, video calling, messaging, push to talk, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. As well, I mentioned that this is purpose-built for deskless workers. It's a very easy-to-use platform, and it's very simple for all of your staff to be able to pick it up and just use it. It's a very familiar interface, and mimics several of the tools that they're probably used to using in their personal lives, whether it's calling, FaceTiming, messaging. All of these different types of technologies are pervasive enough today in people's personal lives that we've tried to then design Zinc in a way where it's very intuitive for anyone new, even if they're not technically savvy, to be able to pick up the device and actually just start using it. And then further to that, it is an enterprise scale platform. It can be centrally managed, it can be integrated in with your infrastructure, and allows you to have, from an IT perspective, more control over the communication that actually goes on in your property. So So let's dive into what we mean by all-mode communication platform. So this divides up into 4 different key areas. The first is team communication, and team communication provides a variety of modes of communication, whether that is being able to do voice calls, both one-to-one voice calls, as well as easy one-click conference calls that can be set up, whether you're sending texts and messages and sharing images and videos to rapidly communicate different situations and ask questions and provide answers. Video calls is also very advantageous. If, let's say you've got 2 people that are working on a similar problem, but they're in separate parts of the property, being able to show someone a video and be able to interact with them over a video call to be able to describe the problem and show the problem is so much more of an effective way of communicating. So instead of having to hop on the walkie-talkie and say, I need maintenance over in this room, you can simply say, I need someone from maintenance on this video call, hop on a video call, and it saves the actual transit time that someone from maintenance needs to do trucking all over the property. Then, of course, our push-to-talk capability, which is new functionality that we just launched last week at the Marriott Download Conference, which really allows you to use our all-mode communication platform as a replacement for traditional radios that you have in your property. So much of hotel operations is set up around being able to communicate across radios that we really felt that it was important to be able to give people that similar functionality of quick, snappy messages driven by voice to allow people to feel comfortable with their operating modes and still being able to communicate in a way that they're very comfortable in communicating with. And then a very unique feature that we have in our platform, which is called hands-free, which allows you to really interplay between having voice-driven communications and message-driven communications. So if I'm a maintenance engineer and I've got a headset on, I can be listening maybe to radio chatter that's going on, but if someone needs me and they're in an area where they can't actually use their voice to send out a quick chatter, they can actually post a quick message into a conversation, and then Zinc will actually read that message to the maintenance engineer who, say, may have their hands full doing something else. So some really unique modes of communication that allow your teams to communicate more effectively. Then on top of that, also corporate and property-wide communications through our broadcast capability. So you can do a one-to-many broadcast. So if a GM wants to be able to send a note out to everyone who's on staff that day, they've all got their devices on them, they can easily broadcast that message out. Everyone sees it. It comes up and actually pops up over the actual interface, which you'll see in the demo. And then on top of that, we actually have analytics built into all of this. So you can start to see who's seen these broadcasts, who's engaged with these broadcasts. And not only do we provide analytics in the actual broadcasts themselves, but we also have full engagement analytics, which allows you to see how people are actually using the system within your environment. And of course, as I mentioned, this is all based on an enterprise platform that gives you centralized control and management, allowing you to configure different channels, being able to add people to groups, remove people from groups, be able to provision and deprovision users very, very easily. And of course, our platform, being enterprise grade, is also fully secure. We take care of your privacy. That's a really critical aspect to us. All of the data is secure. We follow very strict guidelines that relate into healthcare, into military and government security. So there's security and privacy levels that go beyond even what you need within the hospitality environment. And of course, being able to integrate into lots of other systems is a key value of Zinc too. And it runs, as we'll talk about in a minute, across a variety of different platforms. So let's talk specifically about using Zinc at Marriott and some of the things that you want to think about. So Zinc provides really unparalleled and unique functionality in the market today. There's no other vendor that provides an all-mode communication platform on a single device, on a single app. And this gives your staff then the flexibility to use the communication mode that is most appropriate for the environment that they're actually in. And by being able to give people more than just a radio to be able to send short verbal bursts, you're actually now giving them a new way of being able to communicate and being able to share a much richer set of information, which means communication and information can flow much faster, guest issues can get resolved quicker, and the staff themselves now feel more empowered and more connected to be able to actually help solve guest problems. And then further to that, in a radio scenario, you're typically limited to the number of channels that you have. Zinc provides an unlimited set of channels that are all software configurable and can be easily managed both on the device as well as through an administrative console to allow you to bring more flexibility in the way that you actually create and design your channels. Zinc is also very easily deployed within your environment. We run on both iOS and Android. We also have desktop apps that allow you to run in a desktop environment for your desk-based staff. In fact, as Marriott is starting to ramp up on your GXI initiative and more devices are being deployed into the environment, Zinc can very easily run as an app on the same device that you're using to deploy GXI. And Zinc, of course, can be packaged up and deployed through any mobile device management solution that you may have within your region or corporate-wide. Then finally, really easy cost justifications. By using Zinc and being able to collapse multiple devices all into one, you really end up saving a lot of capital costs in your actual device expenditures and being able to then reduce, in some cases, monthly service fees that you're paying. Maybe some of your properties are using push-to-talk devices and they have a cellular subscription associated to them. That can all be wiped clean and be able to then be condensed into one single app that can run on a single device, which can be either a cell phone as well as a Wi-Fi powered device, like an iPod Touch or some of the new Samsung J3 devices that are out, which are Wi-Fi enabled. Then as well, there's a pre-existing MSA with Marriott, which makes the purchase process and all the legal certifications and security certifications, that's all been completed. So it makes it very easy to do a .zinc within your property. So without further ado, let me now turn things over to Ed, and Ed's going to give you a little bit of a tour as to how Zinc works at your property.
Thanks, John. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you guys, and you should be seeing in a moment here my screen and an iPhone screen here with Zinc on it. So I'm going to be walking you through a little bit of a scenario here as to how a maintenance employee may use Zinc on a property. I'll be bringing in a couple characters as well. So I'm playing Chip right now, a maintenance staff member. I'll be bringing in my boss and GM, Sarah, as well, to show you how they might interact. So in this scenario, this goes back to the kind of scenario that John mentioned earlier, where we've got a VP event coming up, and we've got some work to do as a team to prepare for that event. So we're going to be working on the West conference room. So I'll show you what it looks like to use Zinc to facilitate that interaction. So the first thing you're going to see here is my recent conversation screen. As an employee with Zinc on my phone, this is the first thing I'm going to see as soon as I open it. I've got a series of conversations here, some of them with individuals, like this one with Amy Kong, some of them with groups. I've got one here with the front desk / maid service. And you can see pretty quickly that some of these are marked as unread, some of them are read. Makes it really easy to visually see right off the bat what I need to catch up with. I'm going to jump in, though, to our push-to-talk feature here. You'll see at the bottom that I'm listening to all channels. So I'm listening to all of these different push-to-talk channels that I've configured. And when I click on that, I'm going to see what those channels are. So some of these are pretty similar to the way that you might configure a radio channel currently. We've got our maintenance team channel here and our front desk team channel. But one of the nice things about Zinc is that you can configure these in a very flexible way. So you can have groups that are related to departments like that, or you can have groups that are related to particular events or projects and other cross-departmental functions like that. So we have a conference setup team here right now. And this is a channel that I can listen to on Zinc on push-to-talk. And I can have a conversation with anybody here, and I'll show you how that can take place. I can also have one-to-one conversations, as I do with the GM, Sarah, here as well. So I'm working right now on preparing the conference room, and there's a bit of a plumbing issue that's taken place, but I've taken care of it. So I'm going to go ahead and send off a message to my colleagues. Maintenance conference setup team, come in.
This is Sarah. How can I help?
Leak is fixed in the West conference room. Requires housekeeping.
10-4. How bad is the mess?
I'll send over a photo. So what's happened there is we've had a brief interaction, as you would with any kind of voice-based communication system, but a question's been asked that can't really be addressed properly with a verbal answer. So my colleague Sarah on the other end has asked me, how bad is the mess? So I can try to start describing it. Maybe we can see how many housekeeping staff we need to send, but it's going to be a lot faster for me to send an image. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch over from push to talk and jump into the conference setup group. So this is the exact same group that I was just having a push to talk conversation with. It's a one-to-one replica of it, but I can start sending things restricted to just short voice bursts. So I could send a text message here. I could send just a quick description, but what's going to be more appropriate is actually to send off a photo. So I'm going to go over to the photo tool here, and I'm going to send a photo with one click of the mess that I'm seeing. So the nice thing here is that this is all integrated into one tool. So as soon as I know that I need to send a photo, that's a one-click process to get that information out to the rest of the team. Now, this is the same if I need to send a photo from my camera roll, I can do that as well. Or even if I need to send off a document. For example, maybe we've got the audiovisual team coming in today, and I need to send off some of the documents that they'll need to be able to configure their setup for our conference room. I can send off audio messages or even share my location with them if they need to come in from off-site and I need to let them know where the building is. So there's a whole number of tools that we give an employee here to provide their colleagues with whatever kind of contextual information that they might need to be able to get the job done. We've got a number of ways to share information in real time across the other team members on your staff. So if you are sending a push-to-talk message to somebody to try to resolve an issue, and you realize that that's not going to be a sufficient method of communication, that that's not a sufficient mode of communication for you to resolve the issue, you can jump over into this group that's the equivalent to the push-to-talk group. So this is the same team members as are in that conference setup push-to-talk group, and you can start sharing some more rich information with them, some rich media. So what I've done is actually shared a picture of the mess that I was describing to my colleague, because then they can see how severe it is, how many people they might need to send from the housekeeping team, and we can fix that problem a lot more quickly than if I needed to describe that issue verbally. So I did this just by opening the camera tool and clicking one button to snap and send that picture. So it's really easy to use. It's all integrated into one place. So this conversation is the one place you need to go to be able to discuss this issue, setting up the conference room. And you can do this sending off photos from your camera roll as well. You can share documents. So you can integrate with things like Dropbox or Drive, and you can send off documents if, for example, you've got somebody from the audiovisual team coming in and they need some of the specs for your setup. You can send those off easily from your phone. It makes it really fast to get information to the people who need it. You can do other things like sending off audio messages here in the context of this conversation, or sending your location if somebody needs to come in from off-site and they need to know where your location is. And someone who receives this location can then simply click on that and get map directions to come find your property. Now, you can go even beyond this if you need more real-time communication, and you can start a call with your group. So this is just a conference call that's designed for someone who is moving around a property and isn't really able to manage dial-in codes, conference numbers, access codes, and those type of things. It gives them one quick way to start a conversation with their peers, and only the peers who are in the right group to discuss this issue that they need to work on. So that works for groups, so you can have something, a conversation around that conference setup team, or a conversation across a maintenance, front desk, or other departmental group, or you can have one-on-one conversations. For example, if I need to have a quick chat with our GM here, Sarah Melbourne, I can hop into that group, I can send messages back and forth with her, I can even start a video call with her. So if I click the upper right-hand button here, I can start that. Hey Sarah, got a quick issue to discuss. Hang up there. But it gives you a whole number of tools to resolve issues in whatever manner is most appropriate at the time. And this is available across all devices. So whether you've got a maintenance or a housekeeping employee who might be working off of an iPod, iPhone, or Android device, and they're moving around the property, they can communicate easily with someone at front desk who's working off of their computer. And they've got the computer version, the desktop version of the application. They're going to be in the same groups, the same conversations. They can make it really easy to interface across those two different styles of working. And John mentioned this hands-free mode earlier as well. It makes it really easy for someone who's at the front desk to send off a text-based communication if they're in front of a customer, for example, and they don't want to be speaking verbally in front of the customer. And then the employee on their phone can actually receive that message as an audio message read out to them. If they're moving around, they need their hands, and they have a headset in their ear. So it makes it really easy to communicate across team members who are working in different ways and might have different needs for the information that they're receiving. So that's the end user experience. So this is what it's going to look like for your staff members on the team. I'm going to show you really quickly what this looks like from an administrative perspective. So Sarah, the GM, would have access to this admin console. I'm going to run through this pretty quickly as we're running up against time here. One of the key things about this is this gives Sarah and any other key employees at the hotel a way to structure the environment, their communication environment for the company. So this is a central way to administer different groups. So you can define, for example, the audiovisual team and define which people should be in that group. You can define the housekeeping maintenance team, set these things up, and make sure that the right people are in the right groups and have visibility into what those groups are. Now you can also configure these to be, as I said earlier, specific to a particular project or event that's coming up. So they don't have to be departmental. We give you a lot of flexibility to create these groups in a way that's going to make most sense for your property and the events that you have going on. Now, the nice thing about this as well is you get visibility into what's happening with these groups. You have an analytics console that I've got loaded up here where you can see what level of messages are being sent, who are the most active people in your groups. You can see what the most active conversations are. If you see that maintenance is unusually busy this month, you might know that there's something going on with perhaps your plumbing or your electric that needs to be looked into. So you get unprecedented visibility into the different groups and teams and the conversations that they're having across your property. So you have this bird's eye view of what's going on and what you might be able to fix. Another nice thing about this is that it allows you to send out high priority messages and target them at the people who need to see them. So in your official groups, let's say that the housekeeping team, let's say the maintenance team needs to receive a message. I can send out a broadcast to them. I can put in the title, please read, whatever it might be. I can put in some text here. Say I'm sending out an alert about the VIP event that's coming up. I can send a link to more information here to them. Now, this is going to show up very differently than the messages that you saw earlier. As soon as I send this off, it's going to be very obvious that this is a high priority message that needs to be viewed immediately. So, looks like I might not be in that group. But the nice thing about this is, there we are. Okay, so it took a second there with our slow Wi-Fi. But you get this message popping up over the rest of the application. It takes over the screen, and you can't ignore it. So as an employee who might otherwise miss emails that get lost in your spam and lost under the just slew of other emails that you might be getting, with a broadcast, which is what this is a broadcast message in Zinc, it's going to be very clear that this is a high priority message that you need to act on and engage with. So as a user receiving this, I can click around here, but nothing's going to happen until I actually read the info that I need to read or X out of it. So I'm going to close it for now. But the really critical thing about this is that you build accountability as an organization by sending these broadcasts, because you get history as to what is happening with them once you send them out into the wild. You can see live real-time analytics into who's seen them, who's clicked through, and you can actually send out information or reach out to people individually if you're seeing that they're not engaging with this information. So it's about accountability, and it's about sending out high priority information. So just as a quick recap, you've seen what this looks like for an end user who needs to get in touch with their peers, whether it's via push to talk or many other communication methods. You can work from your desktop as well with your mobile teams, and you can administer this all from a central admin console. So I'm going to pass it over now back to my team to start taking some questions and close out.
All right, thank you, Edward. So go ahead and submit your questions through the question panel. And as those get queued up, there was a question, actually two that came in during the presentation, so we'll address those. One was, are you limited to the number of channels? We have 15 currently on our property, so how many can you do?
Sure, yeah, that's a great question. So if you'll notice that Edward on on the card that he brought up with push to talk had 4 channels. What that actually means is that a user can optionally be on up to 4 channels at one time. Traditionally with a radio, you're limited to being on 1 channel at a time. Because this is now a software-based solution, you have a lot more flexibility in the number of channels that you can actually be listening to and quickly responding to at any one time. Of course, that's not a limitation of the total number of channels you can have in your organization. In fact, you have an unlimited set of channels that can be set up. So each department can have a channel to traditionally mimic your environment that you have with radios today. But as well, you can start to create more dynamic and on-the-fly channels that bring together people that are specifically focused around certain events.
Okay, perfect. Another question is, for Wi-Fi, is there anything particular that we need to set up, given that it all runs on our Wi-Fi network?
Sure, yeah, and that's definitely one of the advantages of Zync is because it's a software application, it's running across a generalized network. So the more you strengthen your Wi-Fi network, the more usage you can get out of it. Say when you're running GSI on your Wi-Fi, being able to deliver better guest Wi-Fi experiences, and of course being able to run Zync on that too, opposed to trying to manage a Wi-Fi network and a separate radio network. So with Zync specifically, really there's no configuration that you need to do. Obviously, people need to be in Wi-Fi range in order to be able to use it if they're on a Wi-Fi only device. The one recommendation that we do have is that if you're in a larger property with lots of access points, that you're using the fast switching capability of your access points, which is the 802.11r protocol. But we can talk about that in more detail as we do implementations.
Okay, great. We don't have any other questions at the moment, but I will mention just you see here the next steps. We welcome you. We've created a new ebook specifically for the hospitality industry about ditching the walkie-talkie. You can find it on Zync's website on the Resource Center. If you click to ebooks, it is available there. So I think it's an interesting overview to understand and a good resource for you to share with colleagues who may be wanting to understand what you learned today. So we welcome you to do that. So before, John, you talk about how to get started on the free trial, there are a couple new questions that have come in. One of the questions is there's been significant investments in push-to-talk and radios. Can this feature be integrated to unified communications?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So a couple of things with unified communication and integrating into full radio networks. So from a unified communications point of view, if you're thinking about cloud-based PBX switches and so forth, then you really don't need to integrate Zync into that. By just adding a user into Zync, then you can communicate across all of those modes. Where the integration does start to happen is if your unified communication system is, and the members of that are being driven by, say, an Active Directory setup or some sort of user directory, Zync can integrate directly into that user directory and then have users provisioned into Zync, so then they can easily be set up and configured. And then today, our push-to-talk capability doesn't currently integrate in with existing radio networks, but that is something that we are looking at for the future. And if you'd like to talk more about that, we'd be happy for a direct follow-up.
Okay, good. I know we're at 10:36 here, or 36 after the hour. If you'd go ahead and mention about how they get started.
Sure, yeah, that'd be great. So we have a free trial for Marriott properties that have attended the webinar here. So a couple different ways for you to get started. If you just hop into a web browser and just type in zinc.to/Zinc team, you'll actually be automatically connected over Zync to one of our Zync team members who can answer further questions for you about Zync and actually get you rolling within with a trial for your property. Of course, you can also reach out to us across the phone to get started. It's very simple to get started with Zync. You can actually you can download the app from the App Store or the Google Play Store if you want, or just visit our site and that'll link you to the right spot. By default, you won't have push-to-talk turned on, but if you reach out to us, then we can start a conversation and we can turn on the push-to-talk capability for you and also help you set up your organization and get you set up with a good structured pilot environment that we can then talk through best practices as to how to roll out this type of software within your environment and some of the change management processes that need to happen. And of course, as a reminder, we have the existing MSA with Marriott. So in terms of the actual purchase process and approval process, it's a very frictionless activity that can be driven through very quickly.
Okay, perfect. That closes out on the questions that were asked. Obviously, we're available anytime after this to address any specific questions that come to mind, and certainly can reach out to info@zinc.it at any time. So thanks very much for joining us today, and look forward to having you join us on future webcasts or continuing the conversation. Thanks and have a great day.